My name is Charlie, and I moved to a new apartment complex several months back. It's a quiet and peaceful building for the most part, and my neighbors are all pretty nice. I had been laid off from my job, and because of that, I had to simplify my life. I didn't go out much, at least not anywhere expensive. I would on an occasion still visit a friend, and of course there was still my new job. I got a job in a reasonably sized warehouse driving a forklift. One day, I was coming back from my shift when I saw my elderly neighbor struggling to unlock her door. She looked over at me as I was walking up. "Oh, sweetie, can you please help me get my groceries out of my car?" said the elderly woman. "Sure, Mrs. Margie," I responded. "I just need to set some things inside first." "Oh, thank you, sweetheart. I really appreciate it," she said with a warm smile. After I finished helping her bring up her groceries, she asked me, "So, when did you get a new roommate?" Perplexed by her question, I shot her a puzzled look and asked her, "What new roommate?" "Early when I was getting into the elevator to leave, it looked like someone was heading into your place," she said with a tone, as if she didn't know I'd be surprised to hear about this. "I don't have a new roommate, Mrs. Margie. Are you sure you saw someone going into my place?" I asked her, hoping she was mistaken. She looked as if she was trying hard to remember. Well, now I'm not too sure. You know my eyes aren't as youthful as they once were, so I'm probably just mistaken." "I hope so," I said back, feeling slightly better, but I wasn't completely satisfied. After saying that, she shot me another warm smile and said, "Well, you have a good rest of your day now," before closing the door behind her. While still disturbed by her question, I had opened my door prepared to find my apartment ransacked. However, I was mostly prepared to find someone still inside. I checked every room, my closet, and even under my bed. But there was no sign of life. All of my valuables were still in my apartment, and it looked like nobody had been there since I left early that morning. I eventually chalked it up to just an old woman being a little nosy and making a mistake. But after that day, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if someone was still there with me, but I just couldn't see them. I felt it while I was in the restroom, the kitchen, the living room, and even my bedroom. The feeling only went away after I headed to work, the grocery store, a friend's house, or really just any time I left my apartment. The feeling was most intense at night, especially when I was laying in bed. Seeing something in the dark corner of my room became a common occurrence. These instances started becoming more frequent as the days went on. I bought a lamp for my nightstand and a flashlight to keep in the drawer. I even purchased a .38 special just in case my fears proved justified. However, anytime I saw something in the dark corner and shined a light on it, there was nothing. Time and time again. But the result was always the same. There was just nothing to find. I began doubting my own sanity from all of this. I even told a friend about what was happening, but all she said was that maybe it was just sleep paralysis. But I didn't see how that could be possible, since I wasn't experiencing any form of paralysis during these encounters. Sure, I felt fear, but I was never paralyzed from it. Curious to know if I was the only one experiencing this. I asked my neighbor Paul in the elevator one day, "Have you been having the feeling like you're being watched lately?" Paul was your stereotypical loner. He rarely left his apartment, and he definitely didn't have anyone ever visit him. He barely spoke to any of his neighbors, but I doubt anyone would want to. He always had a pungent smell to him. It was like he would go days without bathing. I honestly never understood how he could hold a job, but I wasn't even sure if he had one at the time. He was also rail thin, like he barely ate, and his tall height didn't help. No?" he said with a nervous chuckle. "Do you feel like you're being watched?" "Kinda," I said. "I've felt this way ever since Mrs. Margie said she thought she saw someone going into my apartment while I was out a few weeks back." "Sounds like you're just paranoid, Charlie. and I certainly wouldn't trust that old woman's eyesight," he said while laughing. "I really doubt anyone is snooping through your apartment at night." After he said that, the elevator door opened up to our floor. Paul stepped out of the elevator first, and I followed suit. "Hope you're right, Paul. My brain has been all over the place lately," I said while unlocking my door. He laughed once more. "Join the club," he said before shutting his door. As the weeks went on, my situation began to evolve. I started seeing a figure in all black out of the corner of my eye. But whenever I would turn to look at it, it would be gone without a trace. One day, after coming home from work, I found my front door unlocked. I felt a pain hit my gut. I pulled out my .38 and began to sweep my apartment. I checked every room, every corner, and under every crack and crevice. But once again, there was nothing. I felt more afraid to find nothing than I would have been to find something. I wanted my suspicions, my fears, and my paranoia to become vindicated. I wanted to finally end it and move on. After I calmed down, I went and knocked on Paul's door. "Yes?" he said once he opened the door. "Hey Paul, did you see anyone messing with my door earlier today?" I asked him. "This again?" he said. "No, haven't seen anyone messing with your door." I felt unsatisfied with his answer. I wouldn't have left my own door unlocked, I thought to myself. I think he could tell I wasn't happy with his answer, because he then told me, "Why don't you ask Margie if she saw anything?" I nodded and then went down to knock on her door. I waited for a few moments before her door slowly creaked open. "Oh, hey, sweetheart. Do you need something?" she said with her famous warm smile. "Hey, Mrs. Margie. I wanted to ask if you saw someone messing with my door earlier today while I was at work." "Oh no," she said with her warm smile fading. "I didn't see anybody." "Are you sure you didn't see anyone?" I asked her, while hoping to jog a memory. "No," she said, while slowly closing the door. "Like I said, I didn't see anybody." After she fully closed the door, I stood there confused. She had never acted like that before. I went back inside and plopped down on the couch. I placed my hands on my face and felt such despair. "What is happening to me?" I said over and over. I then heard a loud knock on my door. Startled, I jumped up and answered it. It was the security guard for the complex. "Hey Mike, what's up?" I asked. He peeked over me to look into my apartment before saying, "I hear you got a secret admirer." "A secret admirer?" I asked, while uncomfortable by his phrasing. "Yeah, that's right. I just got done talking to Polly, and he told me you've been acting strange. He said someone has been watching you," he said. Yeah. Mrs. Margie said she saw someone going into my place while I was out a few weeks back. I guess I've just been a little paranoid," I said, hoping my answer would satisfy. "Oh, I see. Well, I'll keep an extra close eye on your place," he said while reaching to shake my hand. I reciprocated the gesture while saying, "Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it." Yeah, I gotcha," he said before letting go of my hand. "You have a good one, Mike," I said, before closing the door. "Yeah, you too," Mike responded. Tired and drained from the day, I went and laid down in my bed. I didn't even eat dinner. Later that night, I woke up to sound of my door opening. I felt fear like I had never felt before, and I was paralyzed by it. I heard soft footsteps moving about my room. I felt the blanket near my feet get lifted up, and I felt a hand wearing what felt like smooth leather begin to caress my feet. I was panicking on the inside, but I still couldn't move. The hand glided up and across my legs. I was sick to my stomach, but I couldn't do anything to stop what was happening. I then felt another hand begin gently rubbing my right arm. The other hand lifted from my leg, and then began softly caressing my left cheek. Whatever it was, I could tell its breathing becoming heavier. It leaned in, and I could feel its hot breath on my face. I wanted to open my eyes and look at it, but I was afraid it would kill me if I did. Besides, I think that's just what it wanted me to do. I felt cold, slimy lips touch my forehead, and then I could tell it stood up while lifting both of its hands off of me. It moved away from me and headed towards the door. I heard my door handle turn, and then the sound of my door shutting closed. Cautiously, I peeked open my eyes. It was still in my room. It was just standing in front of my door, with its back towards me. But its head was looking at me. Its skin looked black and shiny with the moonlight shining on it, and it was very lanky. It kind of looked like an alien of some kind. Finally, it walked out of my room and closed my door. I just laid there until morning, until my whole room was bathed in sunlight. As soon as my body was free again, I got up and grabbed my .38, and once again, I swept my whole apartment from top to bottom. However, like countless times before, there was nothing. Conceding to the idea that I am experiencing sleep paralysis, I called a psychiatrist later that day. The next few days leading up to my appointment, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't encounter anything remotely terrifying in my apartment. Life felt almost back to the way it was. The day of my appointment came, and I talked for 2 hours with the psychiatrist. She confirmed to me that what I was explaining did sound like sleep paralysis. She gave me a prescription to try out, and some calming methods to try if I experience another paralysis episode. After I got back to my apartment complex, I saw a moving van parked out front. I went up the elevator and saw Paul carrying out some boxes. "You moving out?" I said with a surprised tone. "Yep, I got offered a lead position at another tech company a few states over," he said, "and I already got another apartment ready." "Oh, that's awesome to hear. Congratulations," I said with a smile. "Thanks, man, and hey, could you help me grab the last of these boxes?" he asked. "Sure," I responded. "How many you got left?" "Just those 2 on the ground there. I already locked up the place." "Got it," I said while picking up the boxes, and then followed him into the elevator. He set the boxes he was holding down and turned to look at me. "So, did you ever get over your paranoia?" he asked. "I think so, Paul. I think so." "Well, that's good. I had a feeling you would eventually," he said, while bending over to pick back up the box. It was just a matter of time. I nodded in agreement before the elevator door opened up to the lobby floor. Paul led the way to the moving van, and we placed the last boxes in the back. Paul reached out his hand, and I took it. His hands were cold and felt vaguely familiar. "Take care, Charlie," he said before letting go of my hand. "You too, Paul." After he drove off in the van, I went back up to my apartment looking to take a nap. I walked through my front door when a mysterious letter caught my eye. It was sitting on my kitchen table and labeled, "To Charlie." I walked over and opened the letter. After I was done reading the letter, my stomach dropped. It read, "Dear Charlie, I've really enjoyed knowing you and being your neighbor. But these past couple months together have been the best time of my life. Especially the other night in your bedroom. P.S. Your skin is really soft, haha. Anyway, take care. Love, Paul." I attend a private university. There are terrible consequences if you fail. It's usually the dense odor of sweat staining the library that lets me know how hard I need to study. Obviously, I study no matter what, but some of the tests are easier than others. I let my eyes wander the frantic array of folders, notebooks, and leaking pens. You stay this late, you get to see the caffeine graveyards littering some desks, threatening to spill their cardboard and aluminum dead onto the floor. Or sometimes, like tonight, there's a pair in the corner embracing, sobbing silently into each other's shoulders. At a certain point, a break was in order. I snaked through the crowded tables and made my way down to the first floor where I could step outside. These vapes are shit for you. I find myself sneaking off to the bathroom too often. Cigarettes make you work for it. I unwrapped a fresh pack and smacked one end against my hand. As I brought the lighter to my lips, hungry for that first noxious hit to soothe my lungs, the door behind me swung open. The cigarette tumbled from my mouth with the force of someone running headfirst into me. A blonde kid, young, and on all fours now spraying puke from his mouth in a violent torrent. The grass was soaked when he finally wiped the froth from his lips. "You owe me a cigarette." "What?" he gasped. I looped an arm under his shoulder and pulled him up. "Kidding. You all right?" His legs were shaking, so I set him against the wall and lit another dart while he caught his breath. Once the head rush set in, I offered it to him. He shook his head. "I don't smoke." "Might as well." He looked at the outstretched arm and accepted after a few more breaths. "Max!" he choked out, smoke shooting from his nose like a medieval dragon. After another hit, his shoulders relaxed. He sank against the wall, cradling his knees to his chest. "I wanted to go to Harvard." I took the cigarette back. "Didn't we all?" "Too bad, though. The world preys on ignorance. When you're valedictorian, you won't settle for anything less than the best. And if your family knew the right people, that's what they offered." "How old are you?" I asked, focusing on the orange ember. "Freshman. Turned 19 last month." I smiled. "Senior. Graduating if this exam goes well." I used to say the same thing. Probably, with a little more vomit involved. I procured another cigarette from my pack. "Tell you the truth, though, it's not gonna change. You just learn to aim for the toilet." Max accepted the second cigarette with no hassle. "How do you feel now?" "Better, I think," whispered Max. "Yeah? Well, now I'm stressed." The wind picked up and we shivered under the brick awning. "Do me a favor, and just relax. Everything is going to be fine." We finished the nicotine in silence. Before we headed back in, Max and I exchanged numbers. He asked me if we could study together. "Sorry," I shook my head. "I prefer to study alone. Good luck." The morning of the exam, I found myself in the small bathroom of my dorm, painting the porcelain with last night's half-digested dinner. Sleep had progressively deteriorated throughout the week. Not just me, though. The last few nights I'd stumble over the bodies of snoozing students. Couldn't make it home from the library, so they curled up right there on the corner of the street. I'd never seen that before. The air around campus was soaked with dread. Max had texted me the night before for some last-minute cramming. We got some studying done, but it was mostly me listening to him rant about the university. He moaned about how if he'd known the reality of this place, he'd never have gone here. I nodded, but I wanted to say, no shit. His parents had told him with his test scores, he could get into the most prestigious university in the world. So elite that its existence was unknown to the 99.9% of the population destined for mediocrity. Visions of a world-class life broke the camel's back, and now he was here. Can't judge. Freshman year, after a few international flights and a long bus ride, a small city sprouted from miles of desert. The educators told us we'd be living there for the next 4 years. No breaks, no holidays, no visits to or from parents. No electronics, only pencil and paper. And classes would begin immediately. A population of students, somewhere in the range of 300 to 500, were housed throughout the campus. But that number always changes. Everyone takes the same curriculum with staggered class times. No homework, no extra credit, just 2 exams every year. No leeway for those who failed. I haven't made any friends here yet. Too busy with... Max made a defeated gesture towards his notebook. He was skinny, but I could see hints of an athlete in the tone of his arms. The clock was reading late. I started to pack my things. If we pass tomorrow, dinner's on me. You pick where. Max laughed. I'll run you up heck of a bill. Good, I said. Nothing else to spend it on here. Now, morning au four, the thoughts of dinner were bleached from my mind. I slammed a coffee, pitting it against the 3 hours of sleep I had milked. I made for the exam building, flipping through my notebook while I walked. A line was already forming outside when I arrived. Max was sitting right on the sidewalk, legs crossed, head buried in his notebook. He noticed me as the doors opened. "We got this, right?" Max said. "We got this." Students filed into the exam room, a large auditorium with a stage at the front. Max and I sat together near the back. A few more trickled in until the doors finally shut 5 minutes past the hour. Educators took their posts, one at each exit. Everyone was settled when there was a frantic banging. "Please," a muffled voice begged. "The bus broke down. Let me in. There's still time." But everyone knew the consequences of being late, and the room remained still. An educator took to the stage holding a microphone. He was grinning like he heard a dirty joke he wished to share with everyone. "Congratulations. You've arrived at your final exam of the year." His cadence was choppy. He spoke like he was tasting each word, rolling it over with his tongue before it came out. "We hope you all studied hard. As some upperclassmen may have noticed, this semester's curriculum has diverged slightly from previous years." Scattered pockets of buzzing voices sprouted around the room. Typically, it had been numerous textbooks, with an arsenal of subjects to study from. Not the standard topics you would expect. Dead languages like Sanskrit and Aramaic, the physics behind a black hole, origins and evolutionary paths of reptiles, cancer in the context of biological warfare. This term, each class taught the same subject. They had only provided one textbook for us: dark psychology. "The North Wind created the Vikings," said the educator. "Adaptability under unknown and extreme circumstances. This is the trait most valuable to the futures waiting for you." The educator on stage was almost giddy, shifting his weight from foot to foot. An unseen weight was beginning to fill the room. Max kept looking over, hoping his gaze would elicit some form of offered comfort from me. I had none to give. "We'll begin our exam now. There is no need for pens or pencils. You may stand, walk around, and as always, you may not leave the room. But first, please check beneath your seat for your test materials." Max shrugged after he had gone down and come up empty-handed. I leaned forward and reached beneath my seat. I flailed my arm around until it brushed over something, chilly and dense. I tightened my grip, and with a nauseating certainty pulled the object into view. A black 9mm napped in my hand. It was a gun I was familiar with from previous curriculum. Clambering atop the gasps and frantic speak of the room, the educator's voice peaked. "Under every few seats we've placed a decision maker. Those who possess one, look to your neighbors. Left, then right. Study their faces, hear their arguments. Then, make your decision." I was still looking at the gun. My sleeve was tugged from the right, and I met the face of a guy about my age. He had a flat nose and oval chocolate eyes that bore into me, gauging. They flicked to the gun before he extended his hand. "Jacob," he said, squeezing firmly. "It's my last year here. Last test, actually. I'm looking forward to going home, seeing my family." I nodded. "Max," said a voice from my left. I turned. "I'm Max. I'm a freshman, and it was my birthday recently. I want to live." The nausea was beginning to crawl its way up my throat. A small black spot in the corner of my vision was starting to grow, threatening to take over. I needed to control my breathing. Everyone was out of their seats now, dispersed about the auditorium in tight groups. There was damp conversation with intensity that splintered against the walls. I stood and climbed over the rows of seats until I was at the back of the room. Jacob reached me first. He grabbed my arm and pulled me in close. "I'm not asking you to..." A sharp clatter made us jump. A petite girl in a group of 2 guys next to us had dropped her gun. She was a leaf in a hurricane, trembling so fierce she couldn't move to retrieve the weapon. One of the guys next to her squatted, picked it up, and with no show of hesitation fired point blank into the other boy's face. A dime-sized splotch of red appeared just to the right of his nose, and he accelerated to the floor, like gravity had doubled in strength. A healthy flow of blood hosed from the chunk of flesh, blown out the back of his head. The petite girl shrieked and passed out, imitating the lifeless body next to her. Max, almost finished scaling the rows of seats, flinched and toppled over. The boy with the gun turned to an educator posted at a nearby exit. "It's over, right?" The educator nodded and stepped aside. The boy dropped his gun. For a moment, he regarded the body on the floor. He shuddered and hurried through the exit. Jacob then grabbed me by my shoulders. "Give it to me," he demanded. "You don't have to do anything. I'll do it for you." He extended his open hand, waiting for it to be filled with the cold metal that would guarantee his life. I watched while the educators cleaned the scene. The petite girl was carried out, and the body of the boy swiftly covered and disposed of while the floor was scrubbed. "Our first decision has been made," the educator from the stage announced. Another stinging crack went off, accompanied by a cry. "And the second!" Suddenly, I was on the floor. My vision was smeared and the back of my head pulsed. An ache traced its way from the bottom of my jaw, escaping through my teeth. I turned over and saw Jacob scrabbling for the pistol that had disappeared from my hands. I was able to get to my knees when Jacob stood over me. His right hand was twitching, one of the knuckles torn from where it had contacted my chin. He pointed the gun between my eyes. "Please," I coughed. The black hole of the barrel injected me with fear, and I began to shake. Max slammed into him like a pickup truck. He bounced off the floor, dazed, and immediately scrambling to find where the gun had gone. But Max was quickly on top of him. He pressed his forearm into Jacob's cheek, pinning his head to the ground with his entire weight. The 9mm lay only a few feet from the scuffle, and Max fumbled for it with his free hand. Jacob bucked his hips, sending him flying to land on his face. Again, the gun found itself in Jacob's hands, and he pointed it at Max. He huddled into a ball, covered his ears, and shrieked. "Oh, look at this," chuckled the educator on stage. "So much for all that studying." The gun clicked when he pulled the trigger. Jacob flexed his fingers. Nothing. He brought the pistol to his face and hurried to fix the jam. By then, I was able to deliver my own punch. My form was flimsy, and I felt my wrist pop when my arm followed through. I must have hit a sweet spot because he stiffened up and fell back on his ass. He looked at me confused, like he was hoping I could explain something to him before Max jumped with an arm raised overhead. When he landed on Jacob, he brought the butt of the gun down in a devastating blow that split his forehead into a wicked crimson smile. The confused look turned into a blank one. Another wet crunch, and his arms jerked into the fencing response. An artistic splatter of blood painted Max's face as he raised his arm over and over and over again until Jacob's head was an uneven mountain range of peaks and valleys. My pulse in my ears had subsided, allowing me to hear again. The groups nearest us had paused their deliberations to watch in horror. "Oh!" The words dripped from Max. "What the heck?" "Bravo!" The microphone whined. I pulled his shaking form from the red mess beneath him. The pain in my wrist was distant. I led him past the educator, through the exit, and out into the cool afternoon, while his hands covered his face. We sat in a field for some time. We monitored the clouds in silence, feeling the tickle of grass against the back of our necks. The air tasted like dandelion. Every so often, the sounds of fireworks would find us from beyond the hill, though it was never enough to shake us. The world is beautiful. We are not. Dinner that night was delicious. Max hadn't lied. He finished 3 entrees before asking for the dessert menu. "It's on him," Max said when the waiter asked if the check needed splitting. I smiled and nodded. We walked home that night, bellies full and minds empty. In front of Max's dorm, we shook hands, hugged, and promised to keep in touch. I wished him the best and good luck. A bus was meeting the graduates tomorrow to take us to an airport, and then home. And after that, I don't know. I'm sure my post-academia bliss will not last long. The future waiting for me is impatient. Eventually, someone or something will call upon me and my talents. The educators said our careers are already written for us. So, all that's left to do is wait.